Hi, I'm Tim Leloy, Coordinator of Schools and Employee Campaigns for ShareLife, and I'd like to thank you for your interest in the very first public service announcement contest. All secondary schools within the Archdiocese of Toronto have been invited to participate to make a short 3-minute video on how you can work wonders, which is also the slogan for ShareLife for this year. Now, there's 3 major components that you're going to need to know about in order for you to create the best possible 3-minute video. The first is creativity, of course. The second is the content, and how will you demonstrate that you can work wonders. And the third is the technical aspect. And to talk to you more about how you can work in the technical aspect, here's Pedro, producer from Salt and Light Television.
I'm right here, Tim. So, the first thing you guys want to do is make sure you have a solid idea. Spend a lot of time planning, figuring out what your idea is, and write it down. If you don't write it down, chances are that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, you're going to have to reshoot. So you have a solid idea, you write it down, spend a lot of time in preparation. Then, once you're ready to shoot, most of the time, people make mistakes in 3 areas. Okay, it has to do with framing, with sound, and with lighting. So we're going to look at those. Let's start with framing. So before we talk about framing, let's look at what the shots are. You have a wide shot, medium shot, close up. Right now we're in a mid shot. This is probably what you're going to use most of the time. It's not too close, it's not too far away. You can see my facial expressions. This is probably what you're going to be using most of the time. It's great if there's 2 people talking to each other. It's on a mid shot. Sometimes you want to go to a close up, okay, not an extreme close up, but a head, what I call head and shoulders. Head and shoulders. This is a nice close-up. It's a little more intimate. I don't have to be as loud. I can be a little more quiet. If you want to make a point, something important, you go to a close-up. Every once in a while, you could use an extreme close-up. You get this on TV, not so much on film that much because you don't want to see such a close-up in a big screen. But, a close-up where, they cut off the forehead, make sure you don't cut off the mouth. And it's really intimate and it's something really emotional. You probably don't want to use this that much. You probably want to stay with a head and shoulders for your close-ups, head and shoulders, and a mid shot. Now you also have a wide shot. So a wide shot, this is an extreme wide shot. You can see the whole room, you can see the roof, you can see, this is great if you have a lot of movement, a lot of people, you can't see my facial expressions, but I need to move, I can be louder because it requires the space, or if you're outside and you want to see the buildings or the trees, you can use the extreme wide shot. A wide shot that's also effective is one that is just from my feet to the top of my head. That's a wide shot. It's also not very intimate. You can't really see my facial expressions, but I have some room to move, especially if you're using a widescreen. I have some space to move. You can have several people talking, okay? So you can use the contrast between the extreme wide shot, the mid shot, or the head and shoulders and the close-up, the extreme close-up. Now, let's talk about framing, because you want to make sure, so let's say you're on a mid shot. You don't want to have a lot of headroom, right? That doesn't look very good. You want to make sure that the top of the frame is rather at the top of my head, maybe a little bit of space at the top of my head. So it's the same when you go to head and shoulders. For the close-up, you don't want to have a lot of space. See, that doesn't look very good, right? You want to have the top of the frame at the top of my head. The bottom of the frame is around my shoulders. Now, if I'm talking to the camera, I can be in the center of the frame. But let's say I'm talking to someone that's slightly off to the side of the camera. You want to make sure that you have space on the frame on this side. I'm on the right side of the frame talking to someone on the left side of the frame on the other side of the camera. If I'm talking to someone on this side, you want to frame it so that I'm looking to this side of the camera and the space is on this side of me. Now, I could be talking to the camera and still be on the left side of the frame, or I can be talking to the camera on the right side of the frame. But what you don't want to do is that if I'm looking to this side, you don't want to have space on this side because that looks, you could probably get away with it, but it looks a little strange. And the same thing, if I'm looking this way, you don't want to frame it this way. And if you have 2 people talking to each other, make sure that one person is looking to this side and you have space on this side. The other person has to be looking to this side so that it looks like they're talking to each other. Otherwise, it looks like they're both looking to the same side. So remember framing, not too much headroom, and make sure that you have some space either on one side or the other. One other thing you got to make sure you're doing when you're framing your shot is to make sure that you're in focus. A lot of times the camera, especially if you're using an automatic camera, you put it on auto and the camera is just going to focus on whatever. So let's say that the camera is focused on the cross behind me. Now this is really obvious because I'm really far away from the cross, so it's really obvious that I'm not in focus. But if I was sitting closer to the cross, you might not notice that I'm slightly out of focus and it's the cross that it's in focus. You want to make sure that your subject is in focus. So the way to do this is you zoom in, go really tight into the eye or the cheek or somewhere and focus there. Don't do this on auto. Make sure the camera's on manual. Focus it manually and then leave it on manual. And when you pull out, then the camera will stay focused on your subject where you focused and not on the background. One last thing you need to look at when you're looking at framing your shot is you got to see what's behind the person you're filming. So you got to make sure that you're not filming in front of, unless you're talking about boxes, that you're not standing in front of boxes or a dumpster or garbage, or that there's a sign behind you with distracting letters, or sometimes people, they're standing too close to a pole, or sometimes there's a lamp pole behind your head and it looks like the pole is sticking out of the back of your head. So you got to make sure, you got to look around, make sure that you're in a place that's not distracting. You also don't want to be too close to your background. Okay, a lot of times people they'll find a background and it's a nice wall and they light it and it looks nice, but it's too close to the background. You want to have some distance, not just between your subject and the background, but some distance between the camera and the subject so you can create a little bit of depth and it looks really nice.